Back at it, and I think my microphone is on top of my head. Yeah, it's better. So let's finish up part 2 of agency here. Should not take too long. What we're looking for now is, remember we talked about employers and employees? Well, there has to be a criteria for employee status. There can get to be a very fine line between a contractor or an employee. So here are a few of the criteria needed to be considered an employee. The principal or the employer has to be in control of the work, which means they pretty well lay out what you're going to do. The business, if the business is distinct from the employer, that means that it's probably going to be a contractor status. The work is completed under the employer's direction, needs an apostrophe, which means you're guided by the employer. The employer supplies the tools. There's a length of employment. It's just not for two weeks here and 2 weeks there and scattered throughout on a temporary and unpredictable basis. The method of payment, do they pay you in just cash and not hold any taxes out of it? And the degree of skill required, such as a lawyer has a higher skill level than somebody who would run a machine on a production floor under the direction of a supervisor. And employee status. So why is that so important? Well, number one, it can affect the employee's benefits, whether you end up having insurance or whether your Social Security part is covered by the employer. There are many benefits to being an employee. There are many benefits to being a contractor also. On the employer's side is the liability. Some contractors, even though they're doing a specific job for you, may have some type of accident or cause some harm to somebody else, and if it were an employee, the principal or the employer may be liable for it. If you're a contractor, an outside contractor, the person employing you to do this job may not be responsible. So that's a very big issue. So what is liability and agency? It's sort of, how do we want to put this, contracts, okay? In a contractual way. The principal would know or partially know about the activity that was illegal or caused the harm. The principal would be liable for that if they allowed it to continue. If the principal is unknown, sometimes an agent will act and not tell them that there's a third party involved, and that happens a lot in real estate, simply because if they know it's a large company, they may ask more money for it. If that's the case, the agent is also liable then. So the agent can be held responsible for actions if the principal is unknown. If it's negligence, the principal, that's where that respondent, again, you can spell it two ways. Respondent superior comes in, where the master is also responsible. Especially, remember, negligence, we're looking at a reasonable person. What would a reasonable person do? So if the agent's actions are an intentional tort, which means an intentional negligence, the principal is not liable unless it's within the scope of the employment, unless they were told to do that, unless the principal is aware of the tort and allowed it to happen anyway. And those two kind of go together here. And the agent had the authority to act as such. Again, that was written that is how they were supposed to respond. So all of these right here, okay, are attached to the awareness and the involvement of the principal before they can be said to be liable for it. In an independent contractor, the principal's not reliable unless there are exceptions, unless there is an agreement between that contractor and that principal to allow that type of activity. And if there are crimes that are perpetrated, I guess, by the agent, the principal is only liable if they were participating with those activities also. So the liability is a very fine line, and there are some gray areas in there. Now you can terminate an agency relationship by... Oh my goodness, I forgot a question, didn't I? So let's go do this question over here. And then I will meet you back at terminating an agency relationship. So now we're looking at terminating an agency relationship, and we're looking at the acts of the party. First of all, notice is required, okay? If you're going to terminate that relationship, everybody involved or has ever been involved with that relationship should be notified. A lapse of time, and if the purpose, lapse of time, let's say we had an agency agreement that would last for 6 months. The 6 months is up, so the agency is no longer valid. If the purpose of that agency was achieved, it's no longer valid. If a specific event happened and it's no longer required, or by mutual consent. Again, you can have an operation of law if for some reason the court decides to terminate that agency relationship. Ways that can be terminated by the law: by death or insanity, if it's declared mentally incompatible. If it's impossible, if the courts find that to be impossible to complete, if the circumstances have changed and the courts see that, if there's bankruptcy with the principal, and if there's war between the countries that have the agency relationship within that, which is interesting. It must have came out of World War II. So that kind of wraps up agency. We have one more question. So I'll let you go do that, and I'm going to wrap this up, and thank you much for your time. Thank you. Have a good day.